And the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, or CTBT as it's called, was in fact agreed to and signed in 1996, but it was defeated in the U.S. Senate in 1999 and has not yet come into force some 12 years later and some 40 years after the entry into force of the NPT itself. The Senate rejection of the CTBT in 1999, we should all understand, was contrary to the wishes of the American people, as a poll taken immediately thereafter disclosed that 2/3 of the public disapproved of the Senate's action. Stemming the proliferation of nuclear weapons is unquestionably the greatest challenge presently facing the world community. As President Jacques Chirac, Prime Minister Tony Blair of the United Kingdom, and then Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder of Germany noted in their extraordinary, really, October 1999 New York Times op-ed, in which they declared their support for the CTBT. As we look to the next century, our greatest concern is proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and chiefly nuclear proliferation. We have to face the stark truth that nuclear proliferation remains the major threat to world safety. The cost and benefits of the CTBT should thus be weighed in the context of this overarching international security objective, preventing nuclear proliferation. The most immediate effect on the NPT of the Senate's refusal to give advice and consent to the CTBT in 1999 was to slow agreement by many NPT countries to the new, tougher International Atomic Energy Agency inspections for all non-nuclear weapon NPT parties. After the first Gulf War, as a result of Iraq's success in hiding its clandestine nuclear weapon activity, the U.S. helped lead an effort at the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, to strengthen NPT safeguards to detect clandestine activities on the territory of non-nuclear weapon NPT parties. The more intrusive safeguards were finally adopted as policy by the IAEA Board of Governors and General Conference in 1997 in the form of an additional model protocol. But each NPT party had to sign and then ratify this amendment to its safeguards agreement with the IAEA to make the more intrusive safeguards of great importance to the United States, by the way, applicable to itself. The Director General of the IAEA at this time, that is after the defeat of the test ban, said, "The Senate vote against the ban on nuclear tests was a devastating blow to our efforts to gain acceptance of more intrusive inspections of nuclear facilities around the world. While not all were expected to sign, especially those like North Korea that were suspect, some 60 countries signed the agreement after the 1997 IAEA decision. However, following the Senate's vote on the CTBT, the ratification of this additional protocol proceeded very slowly, although adherence has increased recently. These things are not done in a vacuum. They affect other things that affect us in different ways. If the United States is unwilling to approve the CTBT in the years ahead, what could happen? Unquestionably, the NPT would be substantially weakened, even beyond its present diminished status. This would be seriously detrimental to both the United States and international security, as the NPT has been critical both in constraining the spread of nuclear weapons to new nations and in rolling back proliferation in nuclear weapon capable countries such as Belarus, Kazakhstan, South Africa, Argentina, Brazil, and Ukraine. Of course, if the U.S. does not ratify the CTBT, then it will not go into effect for any country, because the United States, in the terms of the treaty, is a necessary party. Eventually, India and Pakistan may well resume testing. If India tests, China may use that, and the failure of the United States to ratify is reasons for it to resume testing. China may want to produce smaller nuclear warheads so that its missiles can carry multiple warheads and decoys to confuse and overwhelm interceptor missiles from the U.S. National Missile Defense System. If China tests and North Korea ultimately does not agree to eliminate its newly acquired nuclear arsenal, what would Japan and South Korea do? Japan has been a leader in trying to bring the CTBT into force at the earliest possible date. But if India, Pakistan, and China resume testing, if North Korea does not in the end carry through on its commitment to eliminate its nuclear weapons program, and if the CTBT cannot go into effect because of the U.S. Senate rejection, how long might it be before some future Japanese government could consider a secret program to build nuclear weapons to protect itself? Japan felt threatened in 1998 by the combination of the Indian-Pakistani nuclear tests in May and a North Korean Taepodong rocket that flew over Japan a few months later. A parliamentary vice president for defense in Japan was forced to resign in 1999 when he suggested that Japan build nuclear weapons after these events. Although officially Japan remains steadfastly against becoming a nuclear weapon state, he was certainly not the only one in Japan with this view. Japan, like other NPT states parties, has the right to withdraw from the NPT on 3 months' notice if it decides that extraordinary events related to the subject matter of this treaty have jeopardized the supreme interests of its country. If Japan withdrew from the NPT, would South Korea be far behind? Korea has been invaded by both China and Japan in the past. South Korea could well feel threatened by events in North Korea if China had resumed testing and if Japan had withdrawn from the NPT. South Korea had a nuclear weapon program in the 1970s, but was dissuaded from pursuing it by the United States. If it withdrew from the NPT, it could produce nuclear weapons in a short time. Taiwan also had an incipient nuclear weapon program in the 1970s. Thus, a dangerous nuclear weapons spiral could be created in Northeast Asia. Might results comparable to these take place in other parts of the world? In the Middle East, for example, of the states in the region essential for entry into force of the CTBT, Egypt and Iran are likely to wait on Israel before ratifying, and Israel is likely to wait on the United States. But Iran is proceeding to develop the technology to conduct uranium enrichment, as we all know, which could give it the capability to construct nuclear weapons in the relatively near future. Thus, the failure to bring the CTBT into force could contribute to the potential spread of nuclear weapons to several countries in the Middle East, as well as in Northeast Asia and perhaps elsewhere in the world, ultimately leading to the dissolution of the NPT.